Welcome to Prescribing Prosperity with your hosts, John and Alex Soutsos from MedWealth Financial Services, operating through IPC Securities Corporation. In this podcast, we provide unique insights into wealth management, the psychology of financial decisions, and help listeners place the capital markets into perspective. Our aim is to help physicians, business owners, and other medical professionals to live their dream. Life is to live and enjoy, so we'll also cover health and lifestyle-related topics such as food, dining, travel, and unique experiences. Learn how global trends shape our investment strategy as we help you assemble your roadmap to prosperity.
Hello and welcome to the Prescribing Prosperity Podcast with John and Alex Soutsos. Gentlemen, this is part 2 of a conversation. And so for those of you who are listening at home and didn't hear part 2, well, we're going to pick up where we left off. But you can always go back and listen to part 1. And Alex, we were talking about buying a home. We're talking about big decisions in life, and we were in the middle of buying a home. Where do you want to pick this conversation up?
Yeah, so we just finished talking about, saving for a home. And, once you've accumulated the money, the next decision that a lot of people have to make is, okay, where are we going to buy? What are we going to buy? Are we going to buy a condo, or are we going to buy a townhouse? Are we going to buy a freehold home? And I think that's a good place to start. So I'll provide my opinion, and then Dad, you can chime in. But when it comes to buying a home, a lot of people just want to get into whatever house they can get into, and that's fine. You want to purchase a home. You also have to have considerations for work. If you're not working from home, that you have to have proximity to your place of business, and so that's a consideration. You want to be close to family. At least that's important for some people. For other people, depending on your family, you want to be as far away as possible. Understandably so.
Now he says that and he's
from
laughing.
A financial standpoint,
he's right now upstairs in the same house as me, so we don't have that.
And I also live
here.
I also live 5 minutes away, so it's not like I'm very far.
So this is a healthy
you can guess which end of the
folks.
spectrum I chose. Anyway, listen, if I had a real big problem with you, Dad, I don't think we'd be working together. So I think it's self-explanatory. When it comes to buying a house from a financial standpoint, I think one of the considerations that people need to have is appreciation. So if you are interested in maximizing your rate of return on your home, the simple fact is that the rate of appreciation in the city compared to a rural area tends to be higher because there is greater demand for people to purchase a home in the city because of the number of businesses that are located within the city, therefore major employers. And as I mentioned, people generally want to work relatively close to their employer so they don't have to spend a lot of money on a commute. Then the appreciation level, the rate of appreciation that happens within large urban centers tends to be greater than in rural centers. So if you're someone who is looking at this and saying, I just want to buy a house to get into the market, but in the future you plan on purchasing a home that is closer or in an urban center, then you need to consider where your first home is going to be purchased, because the rate of return that you're going to get on your home is going to be less than that of the house that you're trying to purchase down the road. And so if you think about it as a race, you're starting out 100 meters behind your next competitor. By the time you get to the finish line, if you're appreciating at a slower rate than your competitor, they're going to be 120, 130 meters ahead of you. So that puts that much more pressure on you to save an additional amount of money in order to purchase a home. For a lot of people, when it comes to scaling up their homes, the biggest consideration is generally not the down payments. Once you have a home, the down payments that you're going to have for your next home, you can generally get from your current home. It's the mortgage payments that are the bigger consideration because you're taking out a bigger loan. And so that's where you need to make sure that your rate of return is as high as possible so you can have that extra cash flow potentially available to you for your mortgage payments. Did you want to jump in there, Bill?
No. I agree 150%. If you want to live in a city, the biggest mistake you can make from a financial standpoint, for the very reasons you described, is buying something well outside the city, thinking, oh, I can afford this and I like it.
Mhm.
Well, that's great. If you like
Mhm.
it, great. But understand your rate of appreciation is almost certainly going to be less than the rate of appreciation of whatever you might buy in that major city.
That being
Yeah.
said, there are there are other considerations such as property taxes.
Yes.
Some people certainly prefer the rural lifestyle over the urban
True.
lifestyle.
And that's fine.
If you're outside of an urban setting and where the urban area continues to grow and will eventually capture the rural area and make it part of that city, that might be a strategy for getting in at a lower price and then benefiting from that expansion of the urban center. So these are a few nuances that you'd have to do some homework on that to see what works out best for you. But once you purchase your home, you have to decide, or unless your income circumstances change, if you're running a small business and now you have great success and your cash flow is much better, different story. But if you're in a salaried environment and your increases on an annual basis are limited, you might make a move to a rural setting and say, you know what, I'm perfectly fine with this. I'll just
Well,
stay.
I do have a quick question on that too, because and I realize that, we're largely talking to a Canadian audience, so this may not be an applicable question, but in the States, the transition to remote work has been profound, and we are not leaving remote work behind. So there
No.
are a lot of people who have made a decision to figure, to your point, John, I like the rural lifestyle. I can live in a rural lifestyle and I can still perform my work remotely. I would assume that would be a part of the conversation when you're
Yeah.
talking to clients about
Oh,
this.
yeah, I'm in agreement with that. That is certainly a part of the conversation, and more so today than ever before. That
Yeah.
was never an option for you and I, Bill.
No,
In our day,
never.
no, but today it's certainly a lot easier to be able to live in a rural setting and and still participate in active work. I know one of the tax specialists we work with is situated 2 hours away from Toronto.
Mm.
And he comes into the city once a week and gets whatever he needs to get done in the city. And then the rest of the time he works from there, but it's certainly a lot cheaper to be up there. The scenery is a lot nicer, especially if you like nature, and the stress level is a lot lower.
Yeah. But if you're going to live now, depending on the job that you have, some jobs still require you to come in 2 to 3 times a week for in-person work. So if you're going to live outside your urban center, then that means you need to factor in commute costs, and that's something else that needs to be part of the calculus. And so it's obviously not a cut and dried answer in terms of which one is better for each individual. That's a very subjective analysis, but that's just in terms of a value appreciation standpoint. That's what I was trying to drive home there. So
based on our culture here in Southern Ontario, Greater Toronto area, most people, when they want to buy their first home, tend to want to gravitate to a freehold home, a fully detached home. That's the ultimate objective. The reality, though, is somewhat different based on pricing. And so the first step for most people is usually a condominium. Now, condominiums, you can go one of two ways. You can go with a new condominium. The pros are, obviously, they're brand new, a lot of excellent common facilities, often recreational areas in the condo, barbecue areas, communal parties that they hold, et cetera, and certainly oftentimes very close to the urban core of the city. But the unit sizes are extraordinarily small. They're basically like enhanced hotel rooms. And so it's a different lifestyle choice to go into a new condo, and the monthly maintenance fees are also a lot lower because the condo is newer. It doesn't require a lot of maintenance. Basically, it's a savings program for future maintenance, and so that is often more affordable. But you're getting into a smaller condo. Now, on the flip side, you may want to purchase an older condo. Now, the older condos are significantly larger in size. You can get 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 or more square feet, but your monthly maintenance costs are going to be significantly higher. So there's a trade-off there.
And you might not have as many of the modern amenities in
yeah,
your home that the newer condos will have. And again,
yeah.
it's a subjective analysis. If that matters to you, then you may lean towards a newer condo. If you don't mind
Yeah.
that.
And sometimes you might get lucky. You get an older condo that's had a really good board for a long time, has kept
Mhm.
up the place really nicely, and the
Yeah.
maintenance fees are not as high as perhaps some of the competitors. So there's a lot of, as Alexander put it, a lot of homework that needs to be done before purchasing an older condo and
Mhm.
comparing it to a newer condo.
Now,
But then, sorry,
sorry,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say now, so that's if you want to get into a condo. So I've got the figures in front of me, and this is for the GTA, since I can actually give the Canadian benchmark as well. But it's the when we're looking at a house within the GTA, so the average condo is about $684,000 right now. That's the average. So there's obviously some that are more, there's some that are less. When you start getting up into that range, the average townhouse is about $810,000. So it's a jump, but it's not as massive a jump as once you start getting into single family homes. So the difference between an apartment and a condo, 684,000 is the average condo or apartment. The average townhome is about $810,000. So about $125,000 difference, right? If you can get into a townhouse actually has a greater level of appreciation in its value. And so if you're somebody who's looking at this and saying, I'm not going to be in my first home forever, if you can save a little bit extra to get into the townhouse market, you will actually get a better jumping off point for your next home because it's going to appreciate at a higher level. So the rate of return, the cumulative annual growth rate for townhomes is about 7.2% compared to 6.7% for the condo market. So that may not sound like a lot, but that's 0.5% on a year-over-year basis.
That compounds.
Yeah, that compounds over time. And that can make a real difference when you're trying to save for your next home. The reason why the townhome market tends to be a little bit better is because it's a thicker market. So it is being supported by people who are in the condo market who are trying to get into the townhouse market, or first-time home buyers who are just trying to get into the housing market in general and can potentially stretch to get into the townhome market, as well as people who are potentially of an older demographic or people who are on the bubble of being able to afford a single family home. And then all of a sudden, the interest rates have obviously significantly increased since a lot of people purchased their homes 4 or 5 years ago. And so if you're getting renewed at a much higher rate and you can afford the new mortgage payments, you might be forced to downsize into a townhome. And so what you end up happening is you have demand on both sides of the market from above and from below. And so that creates a lot more demand. And so there's less price volatility and greater price appreciation within the townhome market. So if you can stretch to get into a townhome as your first home, that could potentially be a real value add for a first-time home buyer and put them in a sweet spot so that they're in a good position for their next home to get into something that would be a little bit larger than they otherwise might be able to get into for a second home purchase. Anything further to add on that, Dad?
No, I think you summarized that quite nicely. And then the next logical step from a townhome, if you're young and moving up in the world, is to get into a freehold, and that is typically either a detached or semi-detached. If you're in the core of the city, then semi-detached is probably more realistic. But there are parts of the city within the core that also have fully detached, but the price point is obviously significantly higher.
Yeah.
So that's generally the order of operations. Is your first home is often a condo, then a townhouse, and then a freehold, or you start off, as Alexander pointed out, optimally in a townhouse and then move up to a freehold. Or you know what? Some people just love the idea of the townhouse and stay there permanently. So we're not saying you have to go through this progression. There are no right or wrong answers here. It's a matter of personal preference and financial
And trade-offs.
circumstances. Yeah.
And if you're in a townhouse, which is technically run by a condo board, you have to understand that that does mean that you're going to get some benefits, that there's going to be some maintenance that you're going to get that's going to benefit you. That's going to be part of your condo fees, but it also means you have a lack of freedom and independence in your decision making when it comes to the exterior of your home. So things such as windows and doors are not within your control. What is on the front lawn or garden of your house is not within your control. And for some people, that's fine. They don't care about that. But for some people, depending on the situation, you are restricted by your ability to make changes within the home. So that's
Yeah.
just something to keep in
Yeah.
mind.
Yeah.
Um,
And valid point, and keeping in mind that there are townhouses that are also freehold. They're not all
yes, yes.
condo board operated.
Correct. So when you're in a condominium that is a board operated or a townhome that is a part of a condominium, it tends to be a little bit less expensive on the purchase price because you have to pay maintenance fees. On a freehold townhouse, it tends to be a little bit more because you don't have maintenance fees that are paid on a monthly basis. But just to give the numbers for the jump up, if you're going from a first to a second home, if you're going into a single family home, the average price is about 1,321,000 in the GTA. So for a single family home or one story single family home, it's about 1.1 million. So a bungalow is a little bit cheaper. Once you get into a two-story single family home, it's about $1.4 million. So just those are the numbers that you're keeping in mind and that you're targeting when you're trying to save for a second home purchase.
So
Oh, okay.
those are all that's all valuable data to be considering. And I hear these numbers and they astonish me because my first house was $189,000, and it was 2 stories and it was fully detached. And
But you're a certain age, John. Come on.
yes,
You're dating
yes.
yourself. You're dating you and me, my friend.
Yeah. So here's the strategy. When you're buying your first house, and I was a young guy once and looking for a new home. And based on the research I did, I determined that the best strategy was to buy a house in the nicest neighborhood, but buy the smallest house in the nicest neighborhood. So you get in at a cheap price, but you benefit from the price appreciation of the overall neighborhood. And that's exactly what I did. It was in a suburban part of Toronto that we call Mississauga, that today is operating as an independent city. But that was very advantageous for me because I got in at a very decent price. And the neighborhood was very appealing. It was one of the nicer neighborhoods of Mississauga. So the house appreciated quite nicely, even through the downturn in housing prices in the early 1990s. So that is a strategy you want to consider, is try and get something relatively small in a relatively nice and desirable neighborhood to get started.
Yeah, and a couple other things I just want to mention as considerations before we get into mortgages and talking about that. When you're purchasing a home, one thing that you need to keep in mind is you're going to, unless you've inherited furniture or you have furniture from, university or something, you're going to need to furnish your home. And so a lot of people, they save money for the home and then they have the home and then they go, oh, shoot, I don't have anything to actually stick in this home. We're going to be sitting on milk crates to hang out and watch movies on our laptop. You're going to want to make sure that you have money that's set aside. It doesn't have to be a significant amount of money, but if you want to have something of decent quality, you're going to have to probably set aside, $20,000 to $30,000 for some home furnishings.
There's always IKEA.
Yes, there is. But like I said, it depends on what you want to do. You can go into the lower end of the price point, or if you want something that's going to last a little bit longer, you're going to have to save a little bit more. So different options.
My suggestion to a lot of young people starting out that are struggling financially is to consider going to estate sales.
Yes.
There's a lot of high quality furniture available at estate sales at ridiculously low prices. And it sounds a little creepy, but you'll be amazed how nice furniture was made 50 or 80 or 100 years ago, and it would suit any home very nicely, especially if you want to refurbish it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's a great point. Another thing to keep in mind when you're purchasing your home is you have to do some digging and you have to do some research on the age of the major cost items. Obviously we're looking at this from a financial standpoint. So if you're purchasing a home, there are going to be costs after you purchase the home that you need to account for, aside from, as I mentioned, the furniture. So the roof, as we learned, as you learned, Dad, after 25 years, many home insurance companies will no longer insure a roof.
Yeah.
And so after 25 years, you are going to have to replace the roof of your home, regardless of the shape that it's in, because if anything were to happen, you are not going to be covered by that by the insurance company. And so That's a major cost
That,
consideration.
that's really interesting because we moved, the current home we're in is very high quality, and the roof actually was doing very well at the 25-year mark, and in fact at the 30-year mark. But once the insurance company found out the house was over 25 years old, they said, we will renew your insurance, but understand we're not covering anything that happens to your roof. So I was essentially forced by my home insurance renewal to replace the roof, even though there was nothing wrong with the roof.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Which
Or
is
very little wrong with the roof. Let's put it that way. Nothing's perfect after 25 years, but there were no issues in terms of leaking or anything like that.
which is frustrating because it's not a cheap expenditure, and it's a bit of a waste because you have perfectly good materials up there. But anyway, as we mentioned, from an insurance and a financial safety standpoint, it is prudent to just bite the bullet and move on at that point. But other items that you need to be aware of when you're looking at your home: central air conditioning or central heating. What is the age and quality of the unit that you have in place? Because if that needs to be replaced, that can be expensive. Windows and doors.
Yeah.
Windows and doors need to be considered. We're going through some issues right now at our home with the windows. Windows are not meant to last forever. Same with the doors. So if you're in a home that's 20 plus years old, or you're purchasing a home that's 20 plus years old, you got to be asking the current homeowner, your real estate agent, okay, when was the last time these were replaced? You may want to bring a contractor with you to take a look at them and give you an independent opinion. Say, you know what, these may need to be replaced in short order. You need to factor that into the cost of your purchase, or you need to set aside additional money for that in the near future that's going to be allocated to that replacement. Window coverings, I know, Dad, was one that you were shocked about when you bought your first home, how much window coverings
Yeah.
cost. Because
that blew
you
me
don't want to
away.
be you don't want to be walking around commando and your neighbors are getting a free show. You're going to want to put something on the windows.
I don't think my neighbors would want to see me anyway, but that's a separate conversation. Growing up in your parents' household, you never gave any thought whatsoever to the cost of window coverings, and it was absolutely shocking when we first were married, and of course it was always at the behest of my wife. Let's go shop for curtains and window coverings, and of course, the ladies usually have a little bit finer taste than the guys do. I think a lot of guys would stick up some black paper on the windows and wouldn't care less, but but the women want something actually that looks good. I'm sure there's some guys out there that care, but you get the idea. It's very expensive, and you might have to budget 10,000, depending on the size of your home, 5, 10, $15,000 for window coverings.
At least it is a major expenditure. So that's something to keep in mind, and that'll tie into our next topic before we get into mortgages, because that'll be the last one that we touch upon for today's mortgages. But continuing with major purchasing considerations: flooring. Look at the quality of the flooring. If you see any, widening gaps in hardwood floors, you have leaks or bubbles, if flooring needs to be replaced, depending on the type of flooring option that you choose, that can be a very expensive item to pay for. Appliances are another one. Do you have high quality appliances? Are the age of the appliances such that they're going to need to be replaced? That's a cost consideration. And then finally, one that one of my friends dealt with is a history of flooding or water leaks. The last thing you want to do is you want to get into a home that has a history of water leaks and water damage. You don't want to put all of your precious possessions in your home, whether it has a basement or a main level, and then deal with water damage. Water is the single most destructive material in nature. So if you have a home that you're purchasing that has a history of water damage, you need to find out how much it's going to cost to remediate that issue, or alternatively, how much you need to be looking at in terms of additional insurance costs to cover the possessions within your home that may need to be replaced on a periodic basis, or you may just want to choose to not purchase in that neighborhood at all. So those are some major cost considerations. Another one that people generally tend to have is pre-construction versus resale properties. We just did a presentation on this recently. Pre-construction homes tend to be, right now it's not the case in the GTA, but we're in a bit of an anomalous real estate market at the moment. Pre-construction tends to be done at a bit of a discount. in order to attract buyers, because you are parting with your capital up front, but you are not moving in right away. Generally speaking, it's at least a year or two down the road that you're before you're you're moving into the new home. There are also delays and other things that need to be factored into it, but that's an option for people. Resale properties tend to have, you're inheriting somebody else's problems per se sometimes, but you can move into the home right away. And so that can be advantageous for people. Some people like the idea of coming in, taking an existing house, and then just making it their own. So that is a consideration that you need to have. And so there's no right or wrong answer. It truly is a matter of what your preferences are. Dad, do you have anything further that you want to add to that, or do you want to get deeper into the pre-construction versus resale topic, or do you want to move on to mortgages since we're a little bit pressed for time?
I think we should move on to mortgages, but part of that conversation in terms of mortgages is a conversation that I've had with a lot of clients, especially early on, is should you be focused on paying down your mortgage, or should you just stay on the schedule that you're on and use excess cash flow for retirement savings? And a lot of people, especially older people of my generation or in between yours and mine, would want to pay down the mortgage faster. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but just understand something. Sooner or later, whether you want it to happen or not, either your health is going to give out or your mind is going to give out. Now, for some people, it's not going to happen, but for most people, it will. Or maybe the labor market doesn't want you any longer. But you're going to have to stop working and rely on your savings. So when you pay, what's the price of paying down your mortgage faster versus leaving it on its current schedule and using extra savings to accumulate toward your retirement plan? So I did a quick calculation here just to give people a flavor for this. So obviously this can be different for everybody. But you run a scenario where you have two individuals. And Alexander, I think we had this exercise when you were younger, and you spoke about it with somebody else. But what happens when you delay your savings program? And so in this illustration, you have two people each with $25,000 saved up, and they have the capacity to save an additional $2,000 per month. What do you do with that extra $2,000? Do you pay it against your mortgage, or do you save and invest it in your retirement plan? And we do the calculation over 25 years. We have an assumed rate of return of 7%. The monthly investment does not change with inflation, so it's an assumed fixed $2,000 per year for 25 years. So in scenario one, the person invests the money into the retirement plan. In scenario two, the person defers the investment. They use the extra $2,000 a month to pay down their mortgage. And what happens? After 25 years, the person who began their program sooner accumulates $1.71 million versus the person deferred by 5 years accumulates $1.156 million, a difference of roughly $550,000. So that's a huge difference in terms of what that can generate in terms of cash flow when you are retired. Now, I know the counter argument to that. Yes, but my mortgage is paid off sooner. I can buy a bigger house, blah, blah, blah. Yes, all of those things are good, but you can't cash in a brick to buy bread when you're retired. Go ahead.
I would also push back on that notion, because this is something else that we covered in the presentation. Part of people have this notion that real estate is a great investment, and for good reason. It is a very good investment. But the reason why you're able to get such a great rate of return on real estate is because of the fact that you can utilize leverage. So you utilize debt to purchase something which you otherwise wouldn't be able to afford by using your own equity or your own cash, and using leverage or debt to fill in the rest of that purchase price. And then you're able to sell it in the future at a higher level and pay down the difference. So I'll give a quick example here. So you have a $500,000 home. I know that's not gonna that's not a realistic number in the GTA, but we're just for illustration purposes. We're going to start with you buy it in year one, and for $500,000 you put down 20%, which is $100,000, and you borrow the rest, $400,000. You sell it in a year. In a year, the market has gone up 6.6%. So you can sell that home now for $532,975. Your equity, or the loan that you took out to buy that home, after paying your mortgage for 12 months, you have a remaining loan of about $391,254. So the difference between the purchase or the sale price and your loan is $141,721. So that means on your initial $100,000 of your own equity that you invested, you got $141,721 out. That's a rate of return of 41.72% in 1 year. So I understand people don't like the idea of having debt, but you have to think about it as debt is a tool. Now, that tool can get you in trouble if you're not utilizing it in the proper manner. But in this scenario, it can be used to create value for yourself. And so having a higher portion of your house value be equity relative to mortgage doesn't always make sense. Dad, anything further?
Yeah, the other thing that I think is relevant here, and paying down your mortgage sooner and getting into a bigger home is all fine and dandy. But here I am at my stage in life, and I'm renovating my house, and I'm spending as much on renovations as I did on the original purchase price. So there goes the rate of return. It starts going backwards when you do that. So there are so many temporarily. There are so many nuances when it comes to the decision of whether to pay down the mortgage sooner and get into a bigger home sooner, or save toward retirement. I personally lean towards saving for retirement, having a fixed allocation for the future. Generally speaking, I recommend to people to save 20% of their cash flow for the future and allocate the remaining 80% to whatever they want, whether it's paying down the house sooner, whether it's traveling, whether it's buying a 64 vet, whatever you like. The point is, the foundation of a strong financial position begins with a systematic savings program of 20% of your savings into a long-term program for wealth accumulation. And that's my perspective.
Okay. So I think that's a good point to leave it for now. We'll come back and we'll continue with the mortgage discussion, because we'll briefly touch upon fixed versus variable next time, Dad. In our next episode, but for now we'll turn it back over to Bill and wrap up for today.
Yeah, this is a good conversation especially for people who have never bought a home before. There is a reason why it is often referred to as the money pit.
Yes,
and it's and people laugh when they say it because everybody knows it. But when you are looking at buying a home, and just as you guys were talking about, you need to consider the fact that it's a whole lot more expensive than you think it's going to be. And John, to your point about save, set that savings target, get that 20% in, and
Pay yourself
you're going to
first.
be on you'll be on some good financial footing at the very least, following your advice. Alex, for people who need to get in touch with you, want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
Yep. Best ways to go to our website. That is medwealth.ca. That's med-wealth.ca. Or send us an email at info@medwealth.ca.
Beautiful. The other thing people can do if they're listening to this for the first time is hit the follow button or subscribe button, whatever it is that's sitting right down there, because that way you don't have to remember when and where you heard this podcast. You will be automatically notified when the next edition drops. And I'll remind you, this is part 2 of a conversation. You can go back and listen to part 1, which is the episode prior to this one, to get the entire picture. Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate it. On behalf of John, Alex, and everybody at MedWealth Financial, I'm Bill Tucker. Thanking you for taking the time to listen today. And I'm reminding you that you can go out today and make today a great day or not. It is up to you. Thank you so much for listening, and until next time.
Thank you for listening to Prescribing Prosperity. Visit our website at med-wealth.ca. That's med-wealth.ca for more information or to connect with us for a consultation. Don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the hosts and their guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of IPC Securities Corporation. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investment advice. Always seek the advice of a qualified and licensed financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment or retirement planning. MedWealth Financial Services can provide a private consultation to help you determine the suitability of any guidance discussed on the show.